Hi guys, I'm Kasia. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to discuss horror and movies. And today I bring you basically my horror wrap up for the year 2023.
It's coffee time!
I can't believe it, but we are actually ending 2023 already in a couple of days, which is insane. And I wanted to sit down a little bit and talk about, the movies that I have enjoyed the most this year, and let you guys know also which other ones are not horror were my favorites in 2023. So let's wrap up my year in horror. So according to Letterboxd, I have watched or logged this year a total of 232 movies. So that's just movies, not counting TV shows and documentaries and stuff like that. 141 out of those were horror movies. They were under the horror genre. And from those, 72 were horror movies released in 2023. So that is pretty good. Like, one of my challenges this year for me, my personal challenge was to watch a lot of horror movies that came out in 2023. And I think I've done a pretty good job. 72 is a very high number of new releases. So I'm pretty pleased. But I do have to say that I have the feeling this year I didn't have so many strong winners for my favorites of the year. I feel like they were all between 3 and 4. There was not even, I think, one movie that made it past 4 out of 5, which means that not all of them, were as good as I had hoped. There were also many disappointments this year, but I'm not going to talk about the movies that I didn't enjoy because, there's too many of those this year. So we're going to focus on the ones that I did enjoy. We have Birth Rebirth, which is a psychological horror movie and the directorial debut by Laura Moss, and it is quite impressive that this was her debut. It is obviously inspired by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and she put quite a unique spin on this movie. Rose works at a hospital morgue and she is quite obsessed with the dead, and she's making experiments to see if there is any chance that she might be able to bring back people from the dead. Now we have Sally. She's a laborer slash delivery nurse, and their lives couldn't be more different from each other, but then at some point their worlds collide and they end up having to work together. I don't want to spoil too much about the plot of the movie, but I can tell you that, these two women did such an amazing job at portraying their characters. It is a movie that it is gory, but in a very human way. It's more of a medical thriller, I would say, probably, than a full-on horror. It's not like it's full of jump scares and full of your typical horror tropes. The colors and the rooms and everything kind of suggests that this is a very claustrophobic film. There is basically no shots or almost none on the outside, like nature doesn't exist in this movie. And it was such an amazing story that kind of dives deeper into the female body and the things that we have to endure for having a reproductive system. So, I think if you are pregnant, going through miscarriages or anything related to that, this might not be a movie for you at the moment, but it is a truly powerful story. The Passenger. This was quite a surprise for me, and it is a very interesting premise that puts two characters inside of a car that could not be more different from each other. So our two characters work in a kind of like 70s looking diner in America, and one of them is very shy. He always gets bullied. He never stands up for himself. And then we have his mysterious colleague who decides to come to the rescue and kind of defend him from the bullies. That guy is Benson, and he takes Randy for a spin with his car, and they end up having such a weird, awkward kind of journey together. And I guess this might not be a movie for everybody, but for me, this is the type of movies that really work. At its core is a dark drama about two broken people, and the movie also uses humor in order to cut the tension. It is both brutal psychologically and emotionally, and it does a really good job to keep up with the tension until you get to the climax. If you have not watched it yet, this might be a hidden gem from 2023. No One Will Save You, and this is an invasion movie, a thriller with an extraterrestrial kind of spin. And this is a movie that might not be for everybody. It is sci-fi horror, and the majority of the film there is no dialogue. Our main character barely speaks, and the movie is basically just carried on her shoulders. There's basically only her as a main character. So it's a very character-driven film with barely any dialogue. Now, the pacing is something that a lot of people I know might also struggle with, but I just really love the aesthetic of the film, the way the story was told, and the way that the ending was, which might be another point that maybe some people hate the movie because of the ending. I did love to see the aliens. I think they did offer a couple of different types of alien and looks. Some of them you can already see them on the trailer. The only downfall was that I think you saw too much too soon of the aliens, so you got so accustomed to them from the very beginning that it was no longer surprising or threatening. But if you're looking for an alien movie that is a little bit different, and it is combined a little bit with a home invasion thriller, this might be one that you want to check out. Totally Killer. We have a Sweet 16 killer that returns 35 years after he did the killings in this small town back in the 80s. So this is kind of Back to the Future, but if it was a slasher. And I had a lot of fun with this movie. You know, sometimes a slasher just has to be a good time. And I think they did such a good job as well to combine time travel with the typical tropes of a fun teenage slasher movie. I think the fact that a lot of it took place in the 80s, you know, helped for me to love it so much because of the nostalgia of the 80s and how much I enjoyed 80s and 90s slashers. Shipka's performance was amazing because she was able to go from tension to comedy like in no time, and she was great in the film. Little Bone Lodge, and this is a movie that I also know it's not gonna be for everybody. For me it worked because it's kind of like a crime thriller in an isolated location where you have again the trope of home invasion, and for me it worked really well because I thought it was really atmospheric. It had like stormy weather for winter, rain, and it just worked really well for me. There were even moments of gothic thriller in there. So we have this family that is living in this isolated house, and in the middle of a rainy, dark night, some strangers come asking for help. One of them is hurt and they want the family to help them. They let them in, and that is when the problems start. Now, I think, you know, the movie maybe doesn't offer anything too original when it comes to the thriller and the twists and turns of the story, but I felt like it had good performances. You had a good story, and even though I feel like maybe some secrets were revealed a little bit too soon, I think it was violent and it was an interesting movie. So I haven't heard many people talking about it, so I just wanted to mention it also as one of my favorites from 2023. Knock at the Cabin. So this is the Night Shyamalan movie that came out earlier this year. It is based on a book by Paul Tremblay called Cabin at the End of the World, and I was really curious to see what they were going to do with the film, and I was quite pleased about it. I was not such a huge fan of the ending, but that is just a personal choice. So we follow a married couple that are vacationing with their little daughter, and some strangers come knocking at the cabin door and ask them to make an impossible decision. And it is about this group of people that have entered their home and are trying to get something from them. And it gets really dark and really violent and quite intense and brutal. I just feel like, again, we could have gotten a better R-rated movie than the one we had. I still feel like a lot of the violence happened off camera. But anyways, Dave Bautista offered such a good performance. I think it's a really good movie with interesting tension, and a movie that is going to present the viewer a lot of questions, and everybody can interpret things a different way. And I really enjoyed it. It really worked for me. When Evil Lurks, and this is an Argentinian psychological horror film. This one is about some sort of virus that causes people to get possessed, and somebody is infected in town. They don't do the kind of ritual to expel this evil correctly, and that puts this evil, like, it sets it free. And so a lot of people in town starts to get these kind of virus that turns them into a possessed entity. And it is such a unique take on possession and is such a different take on possession. It's also a movie where all the characters at any time can be in danger, so that makes it a lot more fun and makes the tension work really well because literally no one is safe in this film. Now, this is a movie that is gonna make you really uncomfortable. It is a movie that sometimes has a really violent moment that is a little bit controversial maybe, and they drag the scene and let you enjoy it. And a lot of people are gonna have problems with that. I think it had great pacing, like I said, a really interesting concept when it comes to possession, and if you don't mind a movie that is gory and it makes you feel uncomfortable, I think this is one of the best ones that has come out in 2023 because it was also very original and different. Saw 10, which is obviously the 10th installment in the Saw franchise, and it is a movie that takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2, so I was a little bit concerned about it because obviously Tobin Bell, who plays John Kramer, aka Jigsaw, has aged a lot in the last years, so obviously it is weird to see him in a movie where he's supposed to be younger, but he's not. So honestly, I really love this movie. I think the Saw franchise is back with full force. This felt very much like a classic Saw movie, and I feel like they really managed to do something they should have done a long time ago, which is to actually give us a movie where Jigsaw is the protagonist. Like here, John Kramer, this is his movie. In this movie, John Kramer is hoping for a cure and he travels to Mexico to try a procedure that has not been certified, and he uses that opportunity to seek revenge on people there that have done him wrong. So the traps are, or tests as you wish, are really well designed. I really enjoy them because they are very personal for every single person that has done something to him. And in this movie, for the first time, it is truly personal for John Kramer. It's not just that he's targeting people that he doesn't even know. Like this time he knows the people and it's personal. And I think that's why for the very first time, I think almost everybody is going to be on his side, which is a different take on the Saw franchise, because normally you're kind of like feeling for the victims that are put in these tests. And I've always felt for John Kramer, to be honest, but I know a lot of people were more on the side of the victims, and I feel like in this movie they're gonna see themselves actually rooting for John Kramer. Talk to Me, and this is a movie that I really enjoyed in 2023. I actually watched it 3 times already, and I predicted this was gonna be a franchise, and it is. I mean, at least it's getting another movie, hopefully soon. And this was really interesting because, again, it's a movie that gave us a complete different take on possession and cursed objects, if you will. So we have a group of friends that we have as a main character here in the group of friends, Mia. She's struggling after losing her mother, and she spends most of her time at her friend's house, and they decide to go to a party and try this new game, which is basically to grab a hand and you're supposed to say, "Talk to me," and you're gonna be able to talk to a ghost, a supernatural entity, and be possessed for a couple of seconds. And they like the thrill of it, and they do it over and over again, but at some point the game starts to get dangerous. And the first half of the movie and the second half have quite different tones. And it might not work for everybody, but I just felt like they had such a unique idea and they delivered. This movie is also not a movie about jump scares or your typical like horror tropes. It's most about scenes that are set up to make you feel uncomfortable, and they make you watch, and that really works for me. So I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it's one of the best, definitely from 2023, because they brought something different to the table. The Wrath of Becky. So this is the sequel to Becky, and it's kind of the same concept of the first film. Becky gets pissed off by somebody and she seeks revenge. In this case, it's a couple of just stupid guys that enter the diner where she's working, and they make some stupid comments to her and they treat her really bad, and so she's like, you know what, we're gonna get revenge. And this movie, I understand if some people don't like it because the storyline, the plot is very simple, but that's the point. This movie is just about the kills, the gore, the fun of the kills, the absurdity of things, and that's it. It doesn't have to be a serious movie with a lot of deep meanings. It's not what it is. And so I think it delivered with being bloody and fun, and yeah, it's just basically Becky getting revenge and killing people. Evil Dead Rise. So in this new kind of reboot of the franchise, which I thought it was really smart the way that they respected the original, but they also brought something new to the table. So we have now a family that is trapped, instead of in a cabin in the woods, they're trapped in a building. And it is a family that is trapped instead of a group of friends. And it makes it even harder sometimes for the characters to make decisions because it's their own family that is in danger. And so, of course, we know this evil spirit is being released and it's possessing people. People are gonna die. And this movie was quite brutal. I loved how gory it was and how it didn't like hold back at all. There's also a lot of shots in the dark that were done so well, because even though it was like in the dark, you were able to see. There was a scene that includes a peephole, and I thought that was just so smartly done and something I don't see done in horror movies at all, or done so well. It still had the humor that kind of, you know, made Evil Dead what it was back in the day, but also it is a movie that has great makeup, great effects, and it's quite terrifying, and I think this was a great way of bringing back the franchise. Scream 6. And now our main characters that survived the first movie are moving the action to New York. We're out of Woodsboro, we are in New York, and Ghostface is back and wants to kill them. So I think when they decided to do this new trilogy of Scream movies, they had a very good idea of what they wanted to do. They wanted to respect the original and still keep some of the characters from the original, if they could, in these new trilogy, but they also wanted to give us a new group of friends, and I think they did such a good job in this second movie to really establish that group of friends and really make you care for them like never before. And they use the same Scream formula. You have multiple suspects in this film. You don't know who is the one that is doing the killings. You do get the, you know, like the very important opening scene, which I thought was genius in Scream 6. Is probably one of my favorite ones. I think it was fantastic the way that they decided to open this film, because they also did something a little bit different than usual. This time Ghostface is quite brutal. It's not just slash with a knife. It was quite brutal and I really enjoyed it. Sadly, as we all know, Scream 7 is now basically, well, I don't know if cancelled, but everybody has left the ship. So, and I understand why. I just think decisions were made that were stupid and now we're all paying for it. But we will see how the future goes for the franchise. I'm sad that we're not gonna complete the trilogy, especially for the actors and the director that probably had an idea of how he wanted to wrap up the trilogy, or even potentially go further than 3 movies. And now we're all fudged. Thanksgiving, and this has been another one of my absolute favorites from 2023, because I didn't expect to have so much fun with this movie. So after a Black Friday goes really wrong and people get hurt in a store, the people in town are trying to recover from that. But somebody doesn't forget what happened that night and is seeking out for revenge, and he's picking up people from this town one by one and killing them. And so this movie reminded me a lot to the Scream franchise, in which you have a group of friends that are being targeted by a masked killer, and everybody could be the killer. Everybody has access to this mask and they're being picked one by one. And we have also a list of suspects here. A lot of people have potential motives, so you have to figure out who is the one doing the killings. And it was just brutal. It was fun. Like, the humor really worked for me. And I thought they did a really good job when it comes to the gore and the effects. I loved it. I had a blast. Saltburn. Now, this is a movie that I just watched like, I think 2 days ago. And there's not much I can tell you about this movie because I feel like it's better if you go into it without knowing too much. I will tell you that it follows Oliver, who is a struggling student at Oxford that makes a friend, and this friend is Felix, and he is very rich, so he decides to invite Oliver to spend the summer break months with him in his beautiful mansion with his family, and things start to get weird. I didn't know much about the movie when I went into it because I also didn't want to get spoiled about the plot or the awkward moments, let's say. But what I can tell you is this movie started being really interesting. I was hooked. I was interested in the characters. I wanted to know more about them. Then things started to happen that I was like, what the hell is going on? I was just like, what the fuck? And that feeling never left anymore once it kicked in. I was just like astonished. I will tell you, this is not a movie that is supposed to be gory, that is supposed to be in that way, like with a lot of blood and guts. That's not what you're gonna get in this film. It is a thriller, crime thriller with a little bit of splashes of comedy in it. But it was just so well executed. It's a movie that is awkward, it's gonna make you feel uncomfortable, it's gonna be disturbing, but in ways that you never imagined that you could be disturbed. It is by the director that did Promising Young Woman, and I absolutely love that movie, and I really love Saltburn. I actually cannot decide which of the two I like more. They are quite different. But the acting, the guy that plays Oliver, the main actor in Saltburn, he did such an amazing job. It's incredible. I love this movie. It's fantastic. I know it's not purely horror, but I had to mention it here because if you have not seen it, the hype is real. And the last one I wanted to mention is a movie that I think officially came out maybe in 2022, but it was only released here in 2023. That happens a lot for me. And that is Swallowed, which is another movie that it's gonna make you feel awkward, uncomfortable, and disturbing in ways you maybe didn't want to, you didn't expect to. It's another one of those movies that is not horror that comes from blood and gore and all of that, but it's other types of horrors in life. And I am learning to understand that the horror that works for me, or thrillers that work for me, are the ones that truly disturb me and make me uncomfortable in ways I never expected. More than the blood and the gore and the ghosts and the supernatural, which don't tend to scare me or anything. The ones that disturb me in a psychological level, I guess, or in a physical level, those are the ones that get me. And this follows two friends that are trying to get some extra money by doing something that is not exactly legal, and they are in a road trip trying to get this job done when things don't go exactly according to plan. There's some body horror in this, and I wish they would have pushed more certain scenes, certain things that you get to see in the movie. I cannot exactly tell you what because it will be spoiling the movie, in my opinion. But I also know this was a movie that didn't have such a big budget, so I kind of understand why certain things were pulled back a little bit. But this was a fantastic movie, and I haven't really seen too many people talking about it. So if you have not seen it, definitely give it a try. Now I'm just gonna list a couple of the movies that were non-horror movies that I really enjoyed in 2023. The first one is Prison 77. It's a Spanish movie that is based on real events. I thought it was really well executed, and if you love movies that are about prison, about yeah, I guess Spanish history, because it is based on true events, you might enjoy this one. The Whale, I don't think this movie needs much introduction. Everybody probably knows about this movie and what it's about. It was fantastic. It was depressing as well, but it does deserve the hype. The Super Mario Bros. Movie. I had the time of my life in the cinema watching this movie. I did grow up playing Super Mario at my cousin's place, and I've always loved Super Mario. I still play Mario games for the Nintendo Switch. I recently got one for my birthday, and I've been playing it. So I had so much fun with this, and the song Peaches is a hit, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and I think it's partly because Guardians of the Galaxy has been my favorite from the Marvel Universe movies, and I was eager to see how they were gonna finish the trilogy. Honestly, these 3 movies I could rewatch anytime. I'm not a huge fan of all the Marvel movies. Some are better than others. But I truly love Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's also because of the characters. I can really relate to them. Drax is my boy. And I was really happy that, you know, I did enjoy Part 3. Beau is Afraid, which was Ari Aster's last movie, is not exactly horror. It is a long movie. So be prepared for that. And it is weird. It's bizarre. You gotta be ready to accept this movie. It is kind of the story of a man going through a lot. But yeah, I mean, if you like Ari Aster, give it a watch. But I understand why this is not gonna be for everybody. Joaquin Phoenix, for me, is one of the best actors that we have, and I cannot wait to watch Napoleon. I still have not been able to, but I want to just for him. Of course, we have Oppenheimer and Barbie. I did the Barbenheimer thing. I went to see Oppenheimer, and straight from that I went to Barbie. So Oppenheimer was fantastic. It was one of the best movies I have seen that is kind of like a biography of a real person. It was intense. It was kind of, I guess, sad at times when you get a glimpse of humans and what we became or are becoming. I think Cillian Murphy was fantastic, but the movie has so many good actors. And then I went to see Barbie, and I went with an open mind, and honestly I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, but I had a lot of fun with it. And I think Ryan Gosling killed it. He was fantastic in the movie. I love the message they're trying to bring across. I didn't think it was against men, like many people have said. I think the messages that the movie was giving were for both men and for women. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Red, White, and Royal Blue is an Amazon Prime movie that came out in August, and I loved it and I'm obsessed with it. I read the book when it came out. It's based on a book, and I just love the movie so much. I love the chemistry between the main actors, and I think it's just fun. It's one of those comfort movies that is fun. It has a lot of emotion, and yeah, I could rewatch it anytime. And last but not least, we have Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour. And funny enough, I wasn't even planning to go and watch this movie to the cinema, but then I saw Chris Stuckman talking about it and raving about how good it was as an experience in the cinema, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a chance. And I went to that movie and I came out converted, and now I love Taylor Swift. It is what it is. So I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was captivating. I was immersed in that concert. I didn't know all the songs, I didn't know all the lyrics, but I was in there. And I really enjoyed it. So yeah, these were, you guys, my highlights of the 2023 releases that I enjoyed the most. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below which is your favorite movie that came out in 2023. It doesn't have to be horror. I hope that you enjoyed my list, and thank you guys so much for your support, and I will see you all in our next coffee time. Bye!